Well, Pete, it's July, and that means we have lots of summer months, lots of warmth, but unfortunately not much in the way of a dark sky, but there's still plenty to see.
Yes, there is.
Let's crack on with the inner solar system. So Mercury reaches superior conjunction on the 1st of July, so effectively the sun lies between Mercury and the Earth. But it slowly emerges into the evening sky thereafter, and about mid-month, the 10th of July, it's magnitude minus 1.0,
which is pretty good. Yeah,
that's pretty good. Yeah, quite bright, and sets 50 minutes after sunset. So that's a reasonable chance to try and catch it if you haven't seen it before.
Yes, absolutely. By the 25th of July, Mercury will be dimming. It'll be magnitude minus 0.1, setting an hour after sunset. But at the end of July, Mercury will appear near Venus. But just before it gets there, on the 28th of July, Mercury is really close to Regulus, which is the brightest star in Leo, of course. Mercury will be shining at magnitude plus 0.1 and will be 14 arc minutes from the star. Regulus, of course, being magnitude plus 1.3. And in the twilight, that might be quite tricky to see, but that is quite a close approach, really, there.
It is. It's quite a good approach, and another nice way of being able to find Mercury. Next planet out, oh dear. Venus has been in our evening skies and been so brilliant and present, and now we're losing it.
We are. We're going to lose it in a pretty spectacular fashion, actually, because at the end of the month, it basically sets more or less with the sun, which is quite incredible after we've had it so high in the sky.
It just falls towards the sun very rapidly. It's magnitude minus 4.3 towards the start of the month. Sets less than 2 hours after the sun on the 1st of July.
Yeah.
But as you say, by the 31st, it sets just a minute or two afterwards, and that's it. If you look at Venus telescopically at the moment in July, you'll see it's actually now in the crescent stage, which I think is one of your favourite stages, isn't it, for Venus?
Oh, it's a beauty, isn't it, when it gets into that really slender crescent phase. It's just absolutely gorgeous to view, but of course you need to locate it during the day, really, which is the best time to get it anyway, because you can then pick it up higher in the sky and you haven't got the effects of the atmosphere causing problems with the very thin nature of the crescent.
That does make it easier to see visually, actually.
It does.
Because the thin crescent can easily be... It can be very tricky to see when the seeing's poor, because there's not much light and not much of it, and it's easily affected by poor seeing. So seeing the crescent in daytime, particularly a very thin crescent, is best done in daytime skies.
Well, it's when you see it against a dark sky, it's sort of jumping all over the place. And of course, you have that very strong mental effect, which tries to make you complete the circle, which I'm sure is where the ashen light reports have come from.
I'm not convinced about. So I'm not convinced about your scepticism towards the ashen light.
Well, show me a photograph of it, and I'll be proved wrong.
I can't immediately do that
because there aren't any.
Not just because there aren't any. I don't have a picture of the stealth bomber, but I know they exist. So
that's slightly different, Paul. Because if you put a report out around the world and say which said, "Can you get me a photograph of a stealth bomber?" somebody would send you one.
There is also a key scientific principle. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So back to your Astrophysics 101, Pete, and learn the nature of scientific inquiry. It is, well, it would be nice, of course. What we really need is for somebody to spot the wretched thing visually, and then it could be imaged at the same time. I think that's the only way all doubt.
It is the only way, and I would be very happy to accept I was wrong, but I have looked for it for many, many times, and there has just been a complete absence of it. And I have seen the effect of Venus completing the circle looking at it through a telescope, because your brain tries to make it do that.
Yes, true, but I've never seen it complete the circle, but I've never seen the ashen light either. So, and I've been looking for a long time, but I don't know. We'll wait. Let's move on to the next planet. It's a little less contentious. The planet Mars. Oh, goodness me. Mars has been around for ages in the evening sky.
It never goes, does it? After opposition position, it just sits there forever, looking really quite poor because it's got really, really small through a telescope, and it's in a really bad part of the sky, and you just think, get on with it.
It's true.
But it's because it's moved a long way away, of course, and it's very distant, and that means its motion in the sky is just getting very, very slow. But it is quite a frustrating planet in that respect.
It is. It's just sort of hanging around there. I made my last observation of it in May, and then after that, it's just too small and too low down. It's annoying because it sort of chases the twilight, so it's not massively low down, but it's low enough. And
no, it sort of stays in the same place, doesn't it, relative to the horizon, which makes it even worse.
So you can see it there, but you've not got a hope in getting anything. So it's not very good. It is there in the sky, but on the 9th of July, it's 8 degrees from Regulus, which will be tricky to see under bright twilight.
Yes.
And from the UK, an 8% waxing crescent moon sits right of Mars on the 20th of July. So best events we can really hope for with Mars. Next planet out, Jupiter, though, is a good compensation. Jupiter's becoming good. The gas giants Jupiter and Saturn have been so low in the south for the last, decade, really? They're now climbing out again. So to have Jupiter starting to become good is very nice. Best time to see it towards the end of the month. Currently, it's not in an optimal position, but it will become a good evening object later on in the year.
It can't be a decade because it was Jupiter takes 11.8 years to go right the way round.
Yeah, I'm just being. It feels.
It feels like a decade. I know what you're saying. Well, at the moment, because we've got the bright sky of the summer, of course, Jupiter won't be in optimal position, but it will be moving into a really good position just ahead of opposition on the 2nd of November. And I think this is now quite an exciting time for Jupiter because it will be, as you say, it's high in the sky, and when we start to see it against dark sky conditions, it will be quite a stunning planet to get with your telescope. So this is the time to start getting your telescope out, looking at Jupiter and getting used to the view and trying to optimize your view. If you need to think about tweaking your optics or collimating your telescope or getting some Barlows to get a close-up if you're an imager, then this is the time to do it, really.
Yeah, and if you're a visual observer, there's some tricks you can do to see certain features. For example, if you've got a 4-inch telescope or larger, you can see the Great Red Spot. But if you put on a blue filter, that will help make the spot appear much darker because it's a red object.
Yes.
And that will bring it out. And in general, a yellow filter, I find, helps boost the contrast of the main equatorial belts. So those are some steps you can use to take a look.
That's very good. Well, by the end of July, Jupiter rises at midnight BST and reaches an altitude of around 40 degrees above the southeast horizon under brightening twilight. And so that means that's a really good time to start looking for it at the end of July. That's when things are really starting to get into the slot, aren't they, of Jupiter being in a good position to view.
Yeah, 50 degrees, that's practically overhead compared to what we've had.
Well, 50 degrees is what it will end up with over coming weeks. It'll be 40 degrees at the end of July, but what's 10 degrees between friends? A lot. That's not
a lot.
That's been the altitude of Saturn for the last few years.
30 years. And on to Saturn, actually. This is another planet that's improving dramatically. It's visible in the morning sky on the 1st of July. It's shining magnitude 0.6. It manages an altitude of 17 degrees above the southeast horizon under dark twilight, but by the end of the month, Saturn reaches its highest altitude, which is 25 degrees due south under darkness. So Saturn also climbing out of the murk of the southern hemisphere and becoming good again. So that'll be useful to.
Is that what the southern hemisphere is? It's murky.
No. I'm not implying anything about the southern hemisphere. Simply that when viewed from the north, the south particularly in a city, seems to have a lot of low cloud and fog there. So
the southern hemisphere is an amazing place. Having been down there and looked up at the sky, the stars are so vibrant, and everything seems to be higher and better. So,
and you've got so many beautiful things like Omega Centauri, and they're spoilt. They're spoilt. So they don't need the gas. They don't need the gas giants any longer.
Back.
So we'll have them back. Right. Well, moving on to the ash giant. So Uranus is too close to the sun by the start of July. By the end of July, it's starting to become visible.
Yes.
Reaches 18 degrees under darkness. Shines magnitude 5.8, so technically visible with the naked eye. Neptune is morning planet in Pisces, situated just southeast of the circlet asterism. But it's best to look at it at the end of the month when it manages to get an altitude of 29 degrees above the southeastern horizon in dark skies.
Okay, well, let's look at some of the special things which are happening this month. All month long, of course, we have the potential to see noctilucent clouds, which are very high altitude ice clouds. These form in a sheet layer in the mesosphere about 82 kilometres up. And if they're visible, they're typically visible 90 to 120 minutes above the northwest horizon after sunset, or above the northeast horizon a similar time before sunrise.
Okay, so some years we've had some very, very good displays. Other years it's not been quite as active. You never quite know what you're going to get with noctilucent clouds.
No, which is good. That's always the thing. Which the best bit about that actually is that the nights are so short at this time of year that doing an all-night watch isn't really a chore, is it?
No, you just stay up till about 1 a.m, and that's that's it. It's actually also much more pleasant as well because it's much warmer.
Yes.
On the 13th of the month, the 20% lit waning crescent moon sits 4.2 degrees southwest of the Pleiades open cluster. You can catch them above the northeast horizon around 2 o'clock BST or 1 o'clock UT in the morning.
Okay, but on the 17th then,
yes,
we've got the start of the Perseid meteor shower, which begins to show activity. But don't get your hopes up this early on because the rates are pretty low at this particular time. It runs from about the 17th of July through to about the 24th of August. And for much of that time, the Perseid shower doesn't have a very high rate. It's only sort of between, what would you say, about the 9th to the 16th of August where we actually get enhanced rates. And then
it's probably about that, yeah. It's a very narrow window, really, before you really start to notice anything.
Yeah, but it's exciting. And you may catch the odd Perseid sort of appearing early on. So keep an eye out for that. And we've also got minor planet 4 Vesta, which will pass 1 degree north of Aldebaran, which will be visible in the early hours around 3 o'clock BST on the 18th. So that's something to look out for.
It is. We also have, on the 22nd, dwarf planet Pluto reaches opposition. It's currently shining at magnitude 14.4, so you will need a very large telescope to see that in the constellation of Sagittarius, approximately 1.5 degrees south of the beautiful globular cluster M75.
That's a good navigational beacon, isn't it, for it? Really?
It is, yeah, although Sagittarius is quite low down, but if you can find somewhere where you've got a free horizon, finding M75 and tracking over to Pluto shouldn't be too difficult.
No. You can find details about how to do that in the magazine. On the 24th, we've got the 9th magnitude Comet C2020 V2 ZTF, which has been close to Uranus and Jupiter over the past weeks, but it's been unfavourably positioned from the UK. That begins to change around the 24th, and it should start to become visible. You probably need a small telescope to pick it up. It's about Mag 10, just a fraction brighter than Mag 10. But if you check the magazine, you'll find details of where it is.
On the 27th, we have the lunar clair obscure effect, known as the jewel handle. That's visible in the evening. And the jewel handle is made from an apparent arc of light near the northern terminator on the moon. So
it's the Mons Duras around the edge of Sinus Iridum, the Bay of Rainbows.
And on the 28th, you can, if you find the moon around 1830 BST or 1730 UT, low in the southeast, If you use binoculars or small telescope, you can spot magnitude 1.0 Antares just south of its limb. So that's a nice thing to look for.
Yeah, and then at the 29th, at the end of July, we see the broad peak of the Southern Delta Aquarid meteor shower. This year, there's going to be a bright moon in the way, and the moon really affects meteor showers, which will be hopefully very evident when we get the peak of the Perseids on the night of the 12th, 13th and 13th, 14th of August, because the moon will be out of the way. So removing the moon will leave the nights really dark, and that's optimal for viewing a good meteor shower like the Perseids.
Absolutely. Just needed to be clear.
Well, yes. Okay, well, let's have a look at the stars then. As darkness falls, we've already mentioned Antares, but that will appear low towards the west of south. And to the north of Antares, we've got the ill-defined form of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, often likened to an inverted flower pot. Is that how you see it?
No, and I've only ever heard you liken it to an inverted flower pot. So I don't know who this inferring it comes from, because I've only ever used that as an asterism for it.
No, I've heard other people describe it as.
It's just
yes,
you.
I have.
It's not a very bright constellation, and it's certainly not distinctive.
No,
but it's actually quite a large constellation when you see it for the first time. I remember when I was first looking for it, because there's some variable stars in it I found. I was quite surprised just by actually what a reasonable large patch of sky it covers.
I think it's the 11th largest.
Yeah, that's probably about right, yeah. And it contains some very interesting objects. So
yes, it does.
A lot of deep sky objects, like we've got a number of globular clusters. What is it? M10, M9, M12, M14?
Yeah, M14, yeah. M19 and M107. There's some good clusters there as well. There's IC4665, which is near Sebelray, which is Beta Ophiuchi. And if you look to the east of that, actually, there's a little V-shaped asterism. I don't know if you've ever seen this, Paul. It's known as Poniatowski's bull.
So,
it looks a bit like the Hyades, actually.
I have seen it. I should confess, I saw it by accident whilst looking for something else. I came across it, and I noted in my little book that it did look like a smaller version of the Hyades in Taurus. So I have seen it, but not deliberately.
Not deliberately, yeah. Well, that's sold it to everybody. No, it is quite good to look for, and actually, it's a stopping off point to locate Barnard's star, which is the star with the largest proper motion in the sky.
Yes, absolutely. So it's actually an interesting constellation for another reason, in that it splits up to other constellations. So Ophiuchus is the serpent bearer, and to one side we have Serpens caput, the head of the serpent, which projects towards the west. On the other side we have Serpens cauda, the tail of the snake, to the east. And the zigzag Serpens caput stretches north towards quite a distinctive constellation, Corona Borealis, the Northern Crown. Again, I'm following a new variable star. Well, it's not a new variable star. It's new to me. T Corona Borealis, which is
that the Blaze star?
That's right. I knew you'd know it. It's been behaving quite interestingly recently, and I've added it to my list of stars to follow. So it's nice. It's a nice constellation, easy to identify.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is interesting that Serpens splits like that. It's the only constellation which is broken in two in the night sky, and the centre of it passes across Ophiuchus, which is the serpent bearer, of course. So he's carrying it. The top of Ophiuchus is marked by Razelhagu, or Razelhague, however you want to pronounce it, which is the head of the serpent bearer. Nearby is Razelgethi, which is Alpha Hercules, and that's the head of Hercules, the strongman. And he's upside down in the UK skies. Hercules is a tricky constellation because it's not particularly bright, is it?
No, it's not. I actually couldn't believe that it was upside down, because the keystone asterism kind of looks like a torso the right way up.
Yes, it does.
So I was quite surprised to learn that actually Hercules is on his head, because seen from the right way up, it looks like a the right way round. So I was quite surprised about that.
Yeah, we should explain that the keystone is probably the most distinctive part of Hercules. It's a little pattern of 4 stars in the centre, which looks like, well, it's supposed to look like the stone that locks together old stone arches.
Yes.
So it's sort of a lozenge shape. And of course, if you located 1/3 of the way down the western side, so go from the northwest star towards the southwest star, 1/3 of the way down that line is Messier 13, the great globular cluster in Hercules. That's an easy way to find that globular.
It's actually a beautiful globular. I can never resist at the end of the night when I've done the planets and the variable stars I want to do. I often, especially as I've got GoTo now, I could just type in a couple of deep sky objects and have a look. And I do still love returning to Hercules. It was the M13's cluster, because it was one of the first deep sky objects I ever found when I first started in astronomy. And in a 12-inch telescope, even from a city when the skies are fairly clear, a 12-inch telescope will really show a lot of it.
Yes.
And it does have this three-dimensional appearance to it in large telescopes, particularly as you can see stars at the front of it, and then as you pass towards the core, they get unresolved. It gives definitely this three-dimensional quality to it.
Definitely. And yes, as that is one of your favourite objects there, M13, I'll mention one of my favourites, and to do that we need to go to that really distinctive pattern of summer, which is the summer triangle. So you've got 3 stars there. You've got Vega, which marks the northeast vertex of the triangle. You've got Deneb in the northeast, and then Altair is the star at the bottom, which is in Aquila the Eagle. And the Eagle is not a particularly easy pattern to make out. It looks a bit like a sort of raggedy X in the sky. But the bottom of it has a little curve of stars. There's Lambda Aquili there, 12 Aquili, and Eta Scuti. And if you carry that curve round, you arrive at M11, which is the wild duck cluster. And
yes.
I think that's my favourite.
It sounds strange, doesn't it? Because you think, how can a pattern of stars look like a load of ducks in flight? But it really does, and I think it's because it's got. It kind of takes on that same formation that a flight of birds does.
A V.
You've got a V and a leading bright star, and all the rest trail behind it in this fan shape. It really is very distinctive. So yeah,
I don't see that very easily. Actually, the thing which stands out with me is when I look at it, it's difficult to describe it. It looks a bit like a broken plate. Well, it looks like it's a sort
What
of.
are you looking at when you're looking at some of these objects?
A broken plate. No, it looks like a misty patch, but the cluster is covered in sort of dark lanes.
Yeah. Okay.
And they give the impression that you've got sections of it which are sort of floating apart. I suppose that's the way I'm seeing it. But just have a look at it. That's the best thing. Go outside, have a look at this wonderful open cluster in the July sky, and see what you make of it.
Yes, answers on a postcard, please.
Well, I think we'll draw that to a conclusion then. There with the controversy over Venus and the controversy over the appearance of M11. So go outside, enjoy the night sky in the summer, and we wish you beautiful weather. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks, Pete.